Isn't that a beautiful sound? What's going on, guys? Brandon over at LS4 King doing another new product video today. Really excited about this one. This is our stainless steel LS4 King oil pan with starter relocation. It's been a long time coming, so let's dive right into it. We're going to start with the OEM pan. Now, this is just a early LS4 cast aluminum pan. I know it's an early model because there's no level sensor. This is one we just have kicking around the shop that we use for painting motors. That's why it's got a ton of overspray all over it. In OEM form, there's nothing necessarily wrong with these stock pans. You know, cast aluminum design like the rest of the LS, uses the same exact pan rail. There is no major oil control inside. It's just basically an open bucket. But, I mean, that's par for the course for OEM cast aluminum LS oil pans. It does have your filter housing integrated into the pan, and it does have a cooler cover like the rest of the LS4 pans, or the rest of the LS pans, rather. Now, one thing I will point out, the oil cooler cover on the LS4 pan, it's unique, like everything else with the LS4 for some reason. GM, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make the bolt spacing wider for the cover on the LS4 pans. I have no idea why. Everything else is identical. The pressure ports that are actually located in the pan rail are the same as the rear-wheel drive LS pans. For some reason, they deviated from the rest of the LS design, and they went with a different cover. Why is that important? Well, when guys do intake swaps or they need to relocate the oil pressure sending unit, this is the first place that they typically look to pick up that pressure source. And unfortunately, the other replacement covers on the market do not fit the LS4 pan. If you're looking for a product like that on a factory pan, we do offer it. We've got a video on this. It's up on the website, but I figured I would address it here since we're talking about all things oil control. This is our billet cover. Open design on the back half. 16mm port for the LS oil pressure sending unit. 1/8" and 1/4" MPT outlets for any oil-driven accessories such as a turbocharger, superchargers that need external oiling, things of that nature. The kit includes the difficult-to-find AC Delco gasket, hardware, and pipe plugs, stainless pipe plugs, in case you don't need the ports and you only need the oil pressure sensor location. Another thing worth noting, if you're looking to replace your cover gasket and you go into the auto parts store, you look on a website like Rock Auto or something, it's going to have the wrong listing. For some reason, all the electronics parts catalogs tell you that you can use a rear-wheel drive gasket, you know, a standard GM truck or Camaro or Corvette pan gasket for the cooler cover. You absolutely cannot. The LS4 one is unique to the LS4 pans, and that ran through the entire generation from 05 to 09. So, a little off topic, but wanted to make sure you guys know that this is still available. They are in stock, and if you need one for your OEM pan, we have it. If you're going to the LS4 King pan, you don't need it. So, we got that out of the way. We've identified it's a decent pan from the factory, you know, minus a lack of oil control and having some unique, hard-to-find parts, right? So, why would you want this? Obviously, the big difference right off the rip is the starter mount, right? So we've covered this in depth. This isn't necessarily a new product, it's a new design, but why do you need to relocate the starter? Well, if you're making big power, like our supercharged development motor, you're gonna want a 4T80. Now, let me back up, and we're gonna preface something. If you are a bolt-on car, you know, you just have a cam, intake, exhaust, you're still on the 4T65 and you've got a stock oil pan, that's great. You know, you don't need this. This is intended for guys that are chasing big power, big numbers. This is not for 300 wheel horsepower Impalas that you use to get to work and go to the grocery store. This is intended for supercharged motors. It's intended for turbo applications. It is intended for built nitrous motors. It is not intended for run-of-the-mill cars that just have a cam and intake. If you want one, I'll absolutely sell you one, but you do not need it. I just want to get that out of the way now. I see a lot of posts online where guys bicker back and forth whether or not they need the 4T80. So let me just cut right to the chase. If you're mild power and simple bolt-ons, you don't need this. Again, it's for guys that are chasing big power. So with that being said, you know, in order to do the 4T80 swap, you need a manner of relocating the starter, which is exactly what our oil pan does, as you can see here, like we did at the start of the video. So this, by relocating the starter to the oil pan, allows us to fire up this 4T80 with the modifications that need to be made to the transmission case. I've covered that in great depth in another video. I'll link that in the comments so you can circle back and refresh your memory if you have any questions or concerns regarding what it takes to get the 4T80 bolted up to the LS4. But one of the key components is being able to relocate the starter. That's what our stainless pan does. So what are the other benefits of the stainless pan? For one, it's stainless. The entire thing is 304 construction. 3/8 thick pan rail, all the tin, all the bungs, anything that is physically welded onto this pan is stainless steel, including the starter block, the starter mounting pad. One of the reasons we did that, there's several actually. First being corrosion resistance. Even high horsepower guys put a lot of miles on these cars, at least if they're anything like me, they do. Having a pan where you don't have to worry about coatings that could potentially come off, clog pickup tubes, things of that nature. Also, just stainless is a very strong material. And it also has the added benefit of guys at home can make modifications to this pan without farming them out if they have mild welding skills. You know, just about every hobbyist has access to a MIG welder, and if you had 308 wire in it, you certainly could make some alterations to the pan. You know, for instance, let's say it's a rear engine application and our oil return doesn't work for you like it does on the LS4s. And front wheel drive variant, you know, maybe you got an Fiero or something, you totally could burn out a new bung on our pan without farming it out to an expensive race shop and having them weld on aluminum. So that was one thing we kept in mind. And, you know, aesthetically, it just looks so good. Structurally, it's a much stronger unit tying in the bottom half of the motor. And, you know, I think it's just a really, really attractive design that it's going to lend itself to years of use. This pan should outlast your vehicle, hands down. So that was one of our main motivators for choosing stainless over aluminum. To be honest with you, I don't know of anybody who's done a stainless pan for LS applications. There might be some marine grade ones out there. But as far as I know, this is a first. So, you know, as I mentioned, the construction is complete stainless steel. The pan rail is 3/8 thick. I wanted to share with you how they get welded together. This is a 3/4 inch aluminum block. You can see each one is threaded so that we drop the pan rails in first, bolt them down so that during the welding process, it keeps everything perfectly flat, doesn't allow the pan rail to deviate, which helps us maintain very strict dimensions for our starter mount, as well as offering a much better product. You know, this thing's not a seesaw like some of the pans that we've received in the past. You know, this is a super nice design and 100% built in-house. We received the tin CNC bent. Aside from that, you know, cut and bent. Aside from that, 100% of the assembly, welding, everything is done right here in-house. So let's do a direct comparison side by side so you guys know what some of the differences are and what you're working with. So dimensionally, they are very similar. In fact, the sumps are identical heights. Why is that important? It's important because, again, in an effort to make these more cost effective, you could buy the pan with the starter and use your factory pickup tube, save a bunch of money, have a very simple, economical way to start with your 4T80 swap. Alternatively, we also offer a high flow pickup tube setup with a drop-in baffle that allows more oil control. The baffle does not work with the stock pickup tube. It was purely designed around the high flow pickup tube. You know, when that's run in conjunction with the high flow pickup tube, you have a great amount of oil control. But recognizing that that's something that not everybody needs nor wants, We've left it as an option to keep cost of the units down. Now, every single pan when it's assembled does have the mounting provisions, so if you decide to upgrade to the baffle plate and the pickup tube, you can do so at a later time, and you won't need to purchase another pan or anything like that. So, you know, a great economical start with some options to upgrade. Now, we've also incorporated dual drain plugs on 45-degree flats. Why did we do that? Well, think about it. Motor's flat in the car. Most of you guys are working in the driveway. You jack the car up. What's the lowest point? Backside of the motor. Well, that would put your 45-degree parallel with the ground. Pull your drain plug out, and you're going to evacuate the entire sump problem-free. Our drain plugs are also magnetic. So you've got dual magnetic drain plugs front and back of the pan. This also lends itself really nice to guys who have done mid or rear engine conversions because they have a drain plug on the opposing side. So that's one of the reasons we incorporated two separate drain plugs. They are M12 by 1.5. They seal on a crush washer. Again, they are both magnetic. And one really cool thing that is going to be an option on the website as well is if you wanted to incorporate like a petcock drain. That's actually what some of these key components over here are. So what we have here is a 12 millimeter to -6 adapter. Using the same crush washer as the drain plugs, you can thread this 6AN adapter in. Then you could assemble a push lock hose. Put that right on the -6. Find a convenient place to run your petcock to, which we stock these nice -6 ball valve aluminum petcocks. So you could run your length, put an end on your hose, and you could have a really convenient drain system. So you don't have to crawl into the middle of the car and pull the drain plugs out, but you could still have a functional drain plug if you choose to. Now, these little kits will be available online. They have a nice ORB cap that goes on one side so that if you accidentally hit the lever somehow, you wouldn't drain all the oil out of your pan unknown to yourself. But yeah, this is just going to be a little DIY kit that you could add to the pans if you want. I think it's a pretty cool feature for making service a little bit simpler. You know, and the other nice thing about the M12 drain plugs is that M12 by 1.5 is a very common size. So if you ever lose a drain plug somehow, you can run right down to the local auto parts store and get one. It will not accept the factory drain plug. You know, just a fun fact, the factory drain plug on the aluminum LS pans is M12 by 1.75. So it's a different thread pitch. We made the conversion to 1.5 because there's more available adapters and better drain plug options for that thread pitch. All right. Additionally, you'll notice on the front of the pan, this is the front face, we've got an an M18 return bung. They do ship with a plug in place and a crush washer. This is primarily aimed at guys who need oil return ports for various accessories, whether it's your turbo oil return, you have an inline oil cooler and you need a place to return the oil to. We've chosen right on the front face because that is what's most advantageous to the LS4. And you can see how easily accessible that would be on the front face. I actually didn't add one on my own pan just because I didn't need it, but all the production models have it. So that is M18 thread, uses standard O2 sensor port threads. And with every pan, we include an 18 millimeter to -10 adapter, as most guys are going to be using this for a return port for their turbocharger. That's going to be the most common use, in my opinion. Threads right in. Obviously, I did that without the crush washer, but you'd want to pop the crush washer in there, and then boom, you've got a really nice -10 return port. And what I'd like to show you inside the pan is where that return port evacuates, which is above the optional baffle plate. Why is that important? Well, it keeps oil from aerating and foaming around the pickup tube by introducing it above the pickup point and above the baffle. Again, that's optional. It will not ship with the baffle plate. If you want one, you can purchase it with the high flow pickup tube. Aside from that, you know, it's a very simple and attractive construction. We have started incorporating PowerMaster starters into these pans. One thing that was problematic on the previous design was we had a index block that was unique to our starter and very expensive to produce. We've simplified things. These are just box stock PowerMaster starters. The only thing I do here is countersink for the hardware. Now, these will be available, and I don't make anything on these. These starters are, you know, right around $200, $220, $240, somewhere in that vicinity. I'm going to be selling them for what I pay for them, you know, and making the modifications just to make things easier so you can get everything in a one-stop shop. But if you want to purchase just the pan and you want to go chase a starter yourself and either counterboard or use your own hardware, that's totally fine. I'm not going to stop anybody from doing that. And I will share the part number on the website for the starter. I'm only offering them for simplicity. And that way, when you order from me, you know everything's installed, you know it's going to work correctly, and there's no guesswork. The starters are super nice. They are indexable. You have 2 set screws here that you can loosen, and you have a pretty good range of motion. I will say it's not 360 degrees range of motion like they kind of lead you to believe. Where these 2 bolt bosses are, as you rotate the starter, obviously they rotate, and one of the bosses passes through a bolt hole location. So, for instance, you know, some guys have said, oh, why isn't the starter below the sump of the pan? Well, because that mounting location would now be in the way of the bolt which secures the starter to the pan. And for what? You know, to gain a 1/4 inch of clearance, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Definitely not critical. Even when this is in the car, the starter's in place at this height, it is still well above the lowest point, which is the subframe. So plenty of ground clearance. That's not a concern. Just want to alleviate anybody's concerns surrounding the height of the starter. You know, it's a non-issue. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Switching to this starter and its orientation in the adjustable index block has also allowed us to clear up all this real estate, which makes running the wiring easier, plumbing your oil filter housing easier. It just really simplifies things. It packages nicer. And, you know, I got to say, it looks really cool too, you know. So that covers the starter, that covers the drain plugs, it covers the baffle plate for oil control on the pickup tube, as well as the oil return port. Another thing I would like to talk about is filtration. So you'll notice, like every other aftermarket LS pan that isn't cast, there's no filter housing physically attached to the pan. Now, previously, I manufactured these for my last design of the oil pans. These are very tall, very expensive to manufacture. They allow you to sit the filter right above the tin. I've gotten away from these for a variety of reasons. As I previously mentioned, super expensive to manufacture. Still stuck with a small filter, just like the OEM pan. And when it comes down to available real estate, you're not working with a lot right here. You know, the pan rail's right here. It pushes the filter housing out towards the subframe, and that just gets magnified by the 4T80 swap, which moves the whole drivetrain forward. So, you know, we're spending a lot of money to make these. You're still stuck with a small filter. It's right up against the frame rail. I've decided to step away from these, and what I'm endorsing is going with a remote filter relocation kit. We will have several options on the website, but I'll talk to you about a very cheap and affordable way of doing it. So, these adapter plates, they have O-rings and they bolt right onto the pan, kind of like our filter adapter that I just showed you. They are 12 ORB outlets. We have them reduced to -10, as that's probably the most common size for relocating a filter housing. Super simple, bolts right onto the pan, gives you 2 -10s out. Then you can use something like this setup here. Now, this is a oil filter relocation kit from Transdapt. These are super cheap. You can get these adapters for like 30 bucks. The only thing I don't like about them is that they're pipe thread instead of ORB, but beggars can't be choosers. If you want something that's billet with nice ORB fittings, there are plenty of other options out there. We will have some on the website, but this is the most economical. It allows you to mount the filter in a much more convenient, serviceable location. You can clearly see much larger filter, better filtration, oil capacity, and you can assemble it again, super simple with push connect hose. I think that would be the most affordable way of doing it. And the little adapters do come with fittings, O-rings, and mounting hardware. This just makes life so much easier. You know, I could sit here and go on about the performance gains of having better filtration, more oil capacity, but I think a lot of that's common sense. So I'll just skip over that. You know that this is the option that you're going to want to pursue. We do have 2 different configurations. We can have the fittings going straight down towards the ground, or we can have them run parallel to the ground, where, you know, in other words, it would do a 90-degree transition, come out of the pan rail and face forward. Both will be available for purchase online. You just kind of have to determine what fits your application better. And then we're going to put together a couple universal kits that come with a filter housing, your fittings, your push connect hose ends, as well as a length of hose for conveniently locating that filter housing. You know, you want to come up with a bracket or something, or we might even come up with one in the future that bolts right to the subframe and, you know, puts your filter in a more accessible area. So that will be the future, you know. These old spin-on adapters are the past. So the last thing I wanted to show you is just some behind the scenes of how we assemble these pans. So every single pan goes into our fixture, which is 3/4 thick billet aluminum. Pan rail gets mounted first. Tin gets dropped in and burned out. This ensures a perfectly flat unit every single time. At the end, we thread one of our -6 adapters into the 12mm drain plug. And we have these little cute Schrader valves that thread on there. We pressure test every single one of these before we send them out. That way, you're not surprised with leaks or poor craftsmanship. That doesn't come out of this shop. My stuff fits. It works. Sorry about that, guys. My phone died, so we had to refire everything up here. But I think you get the point I was making. This is an extremely nice product, in my opinion. It's the best iteration and probably the final iteration of the LS4 King oil pans. I don't see any reason to deviate from what we have here. Way more economical than our previous offerings. All the information will be available online, as well as all the accessories that you can purchase to really fine-tune this to your specific needs. You know, in addition to everything we've already discussed, one last thing I will highlight is hardware kit. We're going to include stainless steel mounting hardware with every one of the pans, so you don't have to chase down hardware and you don't have to reuse that ugly OEM hardware on such a beautiful product. So, you know, these will ship complete. Again, return ports plugged, AN adapters, magnetic drain plugs, mounting hardware, you know, essentially everything you need to get this pan on your motor and get you in action. I hope you guys are as excited about it as I am. We currently have 8 units available, with an additional 10 coming early next week for assembly. This will now be a regular stocked item. There will be no wait time on these. You know, orders come in, these go out. That's the plan. So in our effort to reduce costs, pass those savings on to you guys, and make this swap more affordable, this is one of the key components, and I'm really excited to share it with you. I hope you guys find it as valuable as I think it is. I'm looking forward to some feedback, and if you have any questions, email sales@ls4king.com. Thanks so much.